Hey all, thanks again for joining me, and today we're doing chapter 2 titled Enter Harold P. Warren. And as you can see, I'm doing my best to honor him. I've added a few more things to my set, and as we go I'll talk about them too. So let's get started. It's kind of a long chapter and I have limited time on my camera here, so let's hope we make it. My memories of Harold P. Warren are of a serious guy on a mission. Writer, producer, director, and actor. A dervish on set, barking orders in all directions. Grumbling, pacing, smoking, working feverishly and at breakneck speed to hold it all together and get this vivid dream off the ground while staying within his meager budget. He had worked toward this goal for a very long time, and although he'd been raised around show business types, professional movie making wasn't on his resume. Born October 3rd, 1923, to parents Joe and Alice Weinstein, Herschel Weinstein grew up in Connecticut and New York to a family that eventually included two sisters. From an early age, Hal was drawn to the entertainment industry, and if not playing in the center, he firmly networked on the fringe. Throughout his life, he wrote scripts, poetry, jokes, sales pitches, music, and novels, and kept collections of many of his ideas. He began his quest for fame and fortune as a 16-year-old doing jokes and improvisation in backstreet clubs around New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. He scrabbled for any chance on stage, honing his skills for bigger stuff and moving into better spots while earning a comedian listing in those cities. Within the next few years, Herschel Weinstein had changed his name to Harold P. Warren and joined the Army as a private in October 1941, just before the beginning of World War II. While enlisted, he was stationed abroad and served as an interpreter. He didn't see any combat action other than in the boxing ring, where he made it to the top of his weight class, says Joe Warren, Hal's youngest son. And all the while, Hal continued to work on improving his stage act and sharpening his writing skills. In 1949, as entertainment director for 18th Corps U.S. Army at Salt Lake City, Utah, Hal wrote and produced a musical comedy titled Chaos in Khaki, with 17 songs, including one, Fantasy of Love, which reputedly was published and recorded. As he developed his act and found other performance opportunities, Hal became increasingly drawn to what he termed the legitimate theater. He felt that most comedians were tragedians at the core and that the stage had a wider range of emotion than comedy alone. He discovered summer stock and worked 2 seasons in Pennsylvania before moving to Georgia. There he continued to pursue his love for the stage in the Savannah Community Theater, with roles including General Bull Moose in Little Abner and FDR in Sunrise at Campobello. In many ways, Hal's love for showbiz carried over to his personal life. Shelley Connor recalls hearing that Hal was so well connected that Benny Goodman played at his wedding to his first wife, Annabelle. When he lived in Georgia, he had an Esther Williams endorsed swimming pool installed in his backyard, and Esther Williams herself came to the house to see it. His short marriage to Annabelle resulted in 2 children, Michelle and Mickey, who were legally adopted by Annabelle's next husband. Hal married a second time to Elizabeth Libby Weingroff, having 2 more children, Shelley and Hal Jr., known as Chipper. Libby was close personal friends with actor Milton Fromm, a regular in every Jerry Lewis movie. This connection got Hal an introduction to the Nutty Professor star and Frank Sinatra. Even at home, Hal believed in big production values. As an amateur filmmaker, he enlisted his kids into acting for home movies and staging the scene in advance for the camera. Shelley Connor, Hal's daughter from his second marriage, recalls her dad waking her and Chipper in the middle of the night one Christmas Eve to film Christmas Morning and the joys of first seeing all the gifts under the tree. Hal arranged the kids at the top of the stairs and then directed them to come down with expressions of excitement and wonder. He directed them to march back up a few more takes until he was satisfied, and then sent them both back to bed without opening anything until the real morning arrived. In recalling the story to me, Shelley seemed a bit bemused, admitting it was not fun and that Hal could be quite demanding within his family. It was a trait that fortunately translated well to sales and business. A quote attributed to Hal in his IMDb biography simply states, "Always give 110% in everything you do. If you don't give it your all, there is no sense in doing it at all." Although he was a driven worker, Hal also enjoyed his leisure time. An avid golfer, Hal also enjoyed horseback riding, painting, drawing, and traveling with his family. Dad had the same work schedule as our school schedule, Shelley recalls. He loved traveling by air and car. Summer was for car trips and seeing new places, museums, historical places, amusements, and a month with family in the Northeast. Although Hal's heart was in performing and he would have been happy with a lifetime on stage, sales was his gift and his bread and butter. He was the eternal, natural-born salesman with a knack for closing the deal, whether he was selling himself, his projects, products, or an idea. In 1954, he graduated from an 8-week course through the Lacey Sales Institute, self-proclaimed to be one of the world's most successful sales training organizations. Driven by a taste for the nicer things in life, Hal found financial stability in sales, everything from fertilizer to life insurance to real estate. Hal moved to Houston in 1961, where he found success selling chemical fertilizer, thus supporting the Texas fertilizer salesman legend of Manos. There he met his third wife, Norma Iris Friedman, a native Texan 13 years his junior, who was working in the drafting department of a local oil company. They married in 1963, and Norma yielded more showbiz clout for Hal. Her cousin is actor Ed Asner. While in Houston, Hal again found the stage in local community theater around Houston and Corpus Christi and became the comedic MC at the 119 Club and for the U.S. Lexington Aircraft Carrier USO camp. He also had the opportunity to test the waters of film when he landed the role of a comic gambler on a television pilot called Poker Annie, and another on a CBS program called TV Dramatic Playhouse. According to a 1967 retrospective article on Hal's career that appeared in the El Paso Herald-Post, Hal's budding success as a TV actor stoked the flames of a possible career in the vast opportunity of film, all while continuing his day job. Around that time, a revolutionary new television program on CBS was catching the public eye, Route 66, featuring a catchy theme song, two handsome stars, Martin Milner and George Maharis, and an equally sexy Corvette convertible. The show was a sort of cleaned-up version of Jack Kerouac's On the Road, following its heroes each week on their cross-country adventures. In its 4-year run on CBS, Route 66 featured actors including Lee Marvin, Robert Duvall, Diane Baker, Peter Lorre, and Norma's famous cousin, Ed Asner. Besides its somewhat unconventional storyline, Route 66 was innovative in another way. It was the first television program to film in a different location for every episode. The entire cast and crew traveled the country and shot several episodes in Texas and New Mexico during the 4 years it was on the air. The first 2 episodes were filmed around Corpus Christi in 1961 while Hal was working in the area. This laid the groundwork for more Manos lore, specifically the meeting of the minds between Hal Warren and Route 66 co-creator Sterling Stillifant, who later went on to win a screenwriting Oscar in 1967 for In the Heat of the Night. Stillifant was in the area again when the cast and crew of Route 66 returned in early 1963 to film 5 more episodes in Texas. Somehow It Gets to Be Tomorrow in Corpus Christi, February 15th. In the Closing of a Trunk, Corpus Christi, March 8th. The Cage Around Maria, Houston, March 15th. 50 Miles from Home, Houston, March 22nd. And Narcissus on an Old Red Fire Engine, Galveston, March 29th. It's said that Hal had a walk-on part as a bus driver in the last of these 3 episodes, which enabled him to strategize a friendship with the successful Hollywood men. Manos cinematographer Bob Guidry told the story about the famous bet between Oscar-winning Stillifant and the future director of the worst movie ever made. One afternoon, Stillifant and Hal were hanging out in a bar discussing filmmaking and screenwriting and what it takes to get the job done. Hal said something like, "Hell, anybody can make a movie. I'll bet that even I could make a movie. I've already got the script and everything. It's a horror movie called Lodge of Sins." He then began to illustrate some of his ideas on a cocktail napkin. Hal would have figured that a bet like that would keep the well-connected Stillifant interested in his planned project, and maybe even lead to more support down the road, but at that point, he had to prove himself. All Hal needed to win that bet was a cast, a crew, cameras, a location, and, oh yeah, a budget. The alleged connection between Sterling Stillifant and Hal Warren seemed to go even deeper, and it's easy to see where Hal borrowed a few plot ideas from Route 66. The parallels between Manos and the Route 66 pilot episode seem more than coincidental. Lost travelers in a convertible come across a strange community with a creepy ferry boat captain guarding passage, no way out, car trouble, and a big boss who doesn't want them there. There's even a pretty girl who seems more intelligent than many around her, but who's still incapable of doing anything about it because, after all, she's a girl, and it's the 60s. Hal held on to his script and harbored the idea while keeping his eyes open to opportunities. In January 1965, Hal and Norma moved to El Paso. There, he got into the insurance business, becoming manager of the American Founders Life Insurance Company. Seeking to build contacts and connections, he jumped right into the local civic groups, and Hal, being Hal, community theater. El Paso had several theater groups at the time, including the brand new Festival Theater, which had just opened its doors officially to audiences in 1965 at 2501 Montana Avenue, El Paso. The new company, with a great lineup of plays on the roster, immediately drew actors, crew, and lovers of theater. Hal's first play in El Paso in 1965 was Mary Mary, playing the role of Hollywood actor Dirk Winston. He never managed to land the role of a lead character in El Paso, instead specializing in bit parts and supporting roles. Although, in 1971, he won an award for Best Supporting Actor for his role of Victor in Barefoot in the Park. Fate set the stage in April 1966 when Hal landed the role of Pietro Belcredi in Henry IV, a 1921 Italian play by Luigi Pirandello. A study on madness with comic and tragic elements, it's about an actor who believes himself to be Henry IV after falling from a horse, and whose wealthy nephew funds an elaborate hoax to support his delusions. Henry IV played to El Paso audiences at the Festival Theater in mid-April 1966. Among its cast were Tom Naiman as Henry IV, William Bryan Jennings as the Doctor, John Reynolds as Knight Ordulph, doubling as assistant stage manager, and Bob Guidry as John the Spear Carrier. This was the moment of Hal's opus truly coming to life. The man knew a good opportunity when he saw it. The acting talent in Henry IV would be a perfect fit for the production of his Lodge of Sin script. Hal was a confident man with a strong self-image and a brazen revolutionary spirit. He viewed Lodge of Sins not as a one-shot deal, but as a vehicle that would open doors for future film projects for El Paso and for himself. It would bring recognition to the wild beauty, southwestern culture, and welcoming community of El Paso, where the sun shines 300 days of the year. Hal hoped to be recognized as the guy who brought the film industry a new and exciting form of economic growth to the Southwest. El Paso already had a very strong theater and music element, so expansion into film seemed like a natural progression. Hal was determined, and when the film industry came flocking to El Paso, he would be ready. He had one completed script and was working on another titled Wild Desert Bikers, a motorcycle gang exploitation flick that his son Chipper had already built a motorcycle to use in the filming of. The plots of both scripts worked perfectly with El Paso's desert scenery and wide open skies. Cut for a second. Had to make sure it was still working. I hope I can edit this. If not, bear with me. Hal already had professional connections through family and friends. Once he won the bet with Sterling Silliphant, he would gain some leverage. Even if these connections were several degrees from the mark, they were connections nonetheless. If anything, Hal was the ultimate optimist when it came to visualizing his end goal. He understood better than most how to sell himself, his ideas, and see results. The only thing left to do was make the movie. The cast of Henry IV fit the bill perfectly. Hal just had to convince the players first, which, for a salesman like Hal, was the easy part. Hal approached his targets individually and privately, telling them just enough about his project and how they would be perfect for the part that he had chosen especially for them. According to Hal, no one but they could best fulfill the characters he had written in his script. He pitched his film skillfully, as only he could, determining the points to press with each actor so nobody hesitated at the chance to do a movie and get paid for it. Dad recalls the day Hal broached the subject of acting in his movie. He had known Hal for a while through the theater, and they had several mutual friends, including Bob Guidry. Dad knew Hal as a man full of ideas who could talk a kid out of an ice cream cone, but until that moment, Hal had never zeroed his attention in on him. He recalls Hal approaching him backstage during a rehearsal of Henry IV. "I'm making a movie here in El Paso, and I've watched you for a while. You would be perfect for my lead role," Hal told him. "Would you have any interest?" Dad needed little convincing, and his answer, of course, was yes. Having immersed himself in the theater since college, he would have loved nothing more than a chance to do more. Possibly even find a paying a paying career as an actor. At the time of their initial conversation, Dad had no idea that along with playing the lead role, he would also be scouting locations, creating costumes, makeup, props, and sets, providing the child and animal talent, and paying for it all out of his pocket on the promise of future payment based on sheer speculation. I know there's more. Within 2 weeks of persuading the cast of Henry IV to be in his movie, Hal had formed Norm Iris Film Company, named after Hal's wife, Norma Iris, and Sun City Films of El Paso Incorporated, a film company with William Bill Brian Jennings, who played the Manos sheriff, as its attorney and president. Hal had known Bill through the theater and insurance business, where Bill had been moonlighting as an insurance agent for extra income. The actors and crew's contract were signed on May 3, 1966. Filming began on May 5th and continued over 3 long weekends for a total of 8 days, with the last scene shot on May 17th. Dad's contract with Norm Iris stipulated that he would be paid $3,500 for acting in Manos, and outlined he would undertake all the aforementioned tasks for a percentage of the stock. He would receive payment for his work when the money started coming in. Dad also signed a contract for me to play the child's role, which included no specific compensation. And my mother jumped on the bandwagon, so she would do the necessary sewing and help design wardrobe without any contract at all. The story of how this nascent production got its name is another one of those Manos myths with a basis in truth. At some point, Hal changed the name of his script from Fingers to Fate, possibly after Dad signing Dad to the project and getting some of his hand sculptures in bronzed clay, stone, and iron on loan to use for props. Dad's story of how the title changed for the third and final time was that it happened during one of the production meetings between himself, Hal, Bill Jennings, and Bob Guidry. Dad suggested changing the word finger to hand, and then thought it would be funny to add the Spanish translation, making it Manos, the hands of fate. It made perfect sense, in a way, since they were in El Paso and all. They discussed it further, thought it sounded cool, and the name stuck. Hal later enjoyed telling his own version of the title story to family and friends, saying the name referred to the Hebrew noun Manos, which means refuge, or God is with us, adding yet another dimension to the name of the film. To Dad and the rest of the festival crew, Hal came across as a bit of a wheeler-dealer who could talk a good story, but also appeared to know what he was doing and how to get things done. He talked about his Hollywood connections and told them he already had investors. He admitted from the start that he wasn't out to make a great movie. In fact, he knew it would be a B movie. It couldn't be more than that with the resources at hand, but it was still going to be the best they could do, which was pretty good. It would lead to more projects in El Paso, and those who joined now would be on the ground floor, and it was only the beginning. All they had to do was get this movie done, and bigger budget films would follow. It sure sounded great when Hal talked about it. After all, what could possibly go wrong? Welcome to that Chapter 2. Chapter 3 will be A Cast Converges, where I talk about the rest of the cast and crew. So join me. In the meantime, just since I have another minute, my camera hasn't turned off yet, I want to introduce you to the Mystery Science Theater official trading card series, and the fact that the next series will be Manos trading cards. And I'm doing some of the artwork. I'm providing a lot of the information, and officially ordained by MST 3000. So I will put a link to the Kickstarter, and you can order some cards. Thank you.